The mind is so incredibly intelligent and able and very simple. And when it's seen like this, you can live freely. That doesn't mean to say that the you that thinks it's living freely, is going to have that beautiful, blissful, contented, incredible, profoundly perfect life. It's just the enjoyment that you've discovered something that was so easy and simple and was denied for most of your life. One cannot suffer until suffering exists. Suffering cannot exist until it's known as what suffering is. We have to create something, or we have to be experiencing something, or we have to realize something that can be categorized as a kind of suffering. So before you can experience suffering, there has to be a way of creating it, or living it, or understanding it, or being it. Therefore, there has to be an idea of what suffering is without a meaning. Okay? Suffering is not a meaning of a particular ailment in the body. When there's pain in a shoulder, we don't even have to know it's a shoulder. We know pain. We know pain. We don't have to create pain for the body to be in pain. Yeah, because inside the body is such a sophisticated system, you have no idea what's going on inside your body. Pain will come. It's inevitable to come. Nothing can stop pain. Unless you cut off all your nerve endings. And then you'll die. But you won't die in pain. But there'll be no point. Suffering is an experience that has been measured, evaluated by external specialist people, by science, by biology, by neurologists, by all this. Oh, let's investigate this suffering so that we can eradicate suffering, eliminate suffering, or help with suffering, or understand where suffering is born from. But see how quickly the mind can develop into moving away from this simple situation. What is suffering? Who is suffering? How can suffering exist without something understanding that this suffering exists? Why is it that we have to overcome it before we know what it is? Why is it that we don't want to put up with it? Because it causes so much added suffering. The idea that this body will not experience itself without space around it. Yeah? Its arms move freely. Means that the body cannot exist without the space. Otherwise, we're just mounds of flesh, mounds of... And the space will not know its space until it has been interjected by a force. There's a relationship going on. The relationship between suffering is that what the relationship is between the sufferer and that what understands itself as suffering. There's not an actual, you cannot, even Buddha says, right, okay, let's say we establish, okay, let's not look at suffering and ego as different. So Buddha says, show me the suffering. What do you mean? Oh, point to where the suffering is. I don't know. It's everywhere. You say, Buddha says, point to me where the pain in the shoulder is. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Here. That. Yeah. We can get to the root, to the core of where the pain actually is stemming from. Where is the suffering stemming from? It doesn't exist. It's not an entity. It's not something solid. It's not something that is accurately pinpointed to somewhere. Where does the suffering? Oh, up here. Just here? No, everywhere. Only to the head? No, everywhere. Yeah. How can we cure it without finding the deep root cause of the suffering? So that's when we make the mistake of going into research and finding out what suffering is. Well, the root core of the suffering is it doesn't exist. It's a man-made constructed idea, because suffering is that what is not an ailment to the body, it's an ailment to the mind that is everywhere. When you hear the term suffering is suffering itself, you say, I don't know what that means. How could that be? But when you say that the body is in pain, the body is experiencing the pain within itself. Yeah, I understand that, because this is the body. Where is the pain? Here today. Yeah, here today. Yeah, here. Where is the pain of the suffering? Where is the point? Where is the suffering arising from? Is it arising from the sufferer? Well, there's no sufferer without suffering. So you want to remove suffering, you must remove the sufferer. How can you remove the sufferer? Realize that there's nothing suffering. It's a mind. And Buddha says, show me the mind. Put it in my hands, give it to me. I can't. Can you put the pen into my hands? Yes. Here we go, Buddha. Yeah, there. Yeah, pen exists. Suffering. Where? How? When? Who? Suffering is when the question is raised and there's no answer. So this is not helping with your suffering. This is pulling your suffering into the open. Because your mind says, give me an answer. How do I remove the suffering? There's no suffering. There's no sufferer. But if the suffering and sufferer has been born through an ego mind, you'll always believe that it exists. So there's only two things to do in life. But don't accept the suffering as anything worthwhile. Or just live with it. Because the moment you live with it and realize there's nothing I can do, it's been with me in this body since the day I was invited to meet what suffering is, ideas and concepts of the ridiculous, of the unachievable, unimaginable, that they exist and I can't find them, therefore I'm going to suffer. And then I suffer not these things that I imagined, I'm suffering the suffering. And therefore I'm suffering the one that suffers. Therefore I become the sufferer and the suffering, and there's nothing to suffer. But we have to, and then we spend our whole life trying to remove the sufferer and the suffering, and we go through the self-inquiry stage, which can take years, and we can go through the enlightened stage and the awakening stage, the religious stage, the meditation stage, the yoga stage, everything to remove the suffering and the sufferer. And if it's ingrained within you, within the years of 20 and 25, if you're not at this stage now, If you've not heard these words at this age now and you're over these edges, there's no chance of you removing any suffering and suffer. What you do is you let the suffering go. The idea that there's a solution to it, that there's someone experiencing it, that there's going to be an outcome of death, which is absolutely ridiculous. The only death that can arise through suffering is the death of the ego. And that's just another puff of smoke. Because as Buddha says, show me the ego. You say, here it is, yeah. I have it there, yeah. Okay, let's end it. Huh? Let's end it. What do I do? Do you want to keep it? No. Because within that, there is suffering. So what do you want to do with it? I don't know. I don't know what to do with it. No, because you don't want to get rid of it. You don't want to detach from the suffering. If you did, you'd just go, gone. Wow. It's that simple. There's no magic formula. The speaker's not saying, go try and remove suffering, because it's ingrained. And I'll tell you something. The speaker is ingrained with suffering from childhood, from adulthood, whatever. And even enlightenment, it cannot get rid of it, because it's a neurological connection. Everything is connected. This body, whenever something goes into this body cannot get rid of it. Whenever something gets into the mind, it wants to keep it. The body has a function of getting rid of food, but it's not a function of getting rid of that what is collated, the experiences, the knowledge, the information. But the mind, the ego mind, the replica, the reflective, mirror-like mind. No, I want to keep it. No chance I'm letting anything go. Because to lose is to fail. To lose anything is to fail. Yeah? So the ego doesn't want to let go of the ego. Think about that. The ego does not want to let go of the ego. What is the ego? Is the ego in your hands, or is the ego you? I am the sufferer. This thought goes. I feel kind of empty. I kind of like it, but it's intimidating. Wow. No, give me back the ego. I want to suffer. I can't live without suffering. I have to be the sufferer. I love being the sufferer. Ego does not want to leave. Does not want to lose. Does not want to feel empty. Does not want to feel pure. Does not want to feel tranquil. Because ego is important, but not as important as to create that suffering that you believe you will die from. Just like the wind. The pain cannot be blown away by the wind. But the ideas, the concepts, the suffering, the failures, the depressions, the gods, the souls, the spirits, the being, all passing, coming and going, breezes. Sometimes a good breeze, sometimes a bad breeze, sometimes a hurricane, sometimes stillness.